my X-fans. Greetings, Muty lovers. This is Uncanny. We're back. The Mutant Musings of Matt and Sis. It's the show where we discuss Marvel's Uncanny X-Men comic all the way from 1975's giant-size X-Men #1 to the present day, issue by issue. My name is Matt. I write and draw a comic called Steamroller Man, which you can read for free at steamrollerman.com. And this is my co-host, Sis, publisher, promoter, and founder of Comex Studios Australia. You can find everything Comex at comex.net.au. That's comex.net.au. Sis, today we are discussing Uncanny X-Men number 95.
Yes.
What were your thoughts on this one? What was your first impression of this issue?
Well, the first impression of reading the entire issue is the ending really stuck with me, but we won't talk about that just yet.
Right.
It's called Warhunt. I'll just throw that in there. Warhunt.
Right.
And unlike the last two issues we've read, there is not two chapters in this one. There is just the one, just Warhunt, whole book.
True.
So that's something I noticed as well. What I'll quickly do is go through the team that made it. We've got Chris Claremont as the writer, Len Wein as the plotter, Dave Cockrum again as the artist, good stuff. Sam Granger as the inker, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Sam Granger.
Karen Mentlow as the letterer. So that's different than last episode. Petra Goldberg as the colorist, and Marv Wolfram as the editor. So I'm curious when Chris takes over fully. So I'm curious when that issue happens. But yeah, I guess Len still has to stick around to get the story where he wants it to be, because I'm sure he wrote more than just the giant size arc. But this one has the Eddie-Men, as we were talking about last. This is the continuation of last episode, so last issue. I've got to stop saying episode. Last issue, where they've just been their vehicle has just been zapped and vaporized or something. I'm not overly sure what happened there, but they all stayed solid and alive, and they're now falling from a great height.
Yes, falling to their dooms.
To their doom. And that's the other thing. This on the cover of this one, it's not a hoax. It's not a dream. In this issue, an X-Men dies.
I wonder whether that wording has kind of become a cliche in comic book circles. They're not a hoax, not an imaginary story. In this issue, someone dies, and I wonder whether this was the first time that sort of thing was used. I'm not conversant enough with all of Marvel Comics history to know, but this is so early in that history that I wonder whether this is one of the first instances of that. And we won't spoil who dies yet for anyone who hasn't read this almost 50-year-old comic. We won't spoil the ending for you until we get to the ending, and then we'll spoil it.
Then we'll spoil it, yes.
But one thing that I found funny about the first part of this issue is that they're falling to their deaths, but they have this very casual seeming conversation midair.
Very casual little conversation going on down the bottom of this page. And I'm pretty sure there's
also time
wind rushing through and
nobody's it's like there's no sense of being rushed, we're going to hit the ground in 20 seconds. It's Nightcrawler takes plenty of time to explain why, no, hang on. There's a science behind my teleportation. It's called the law of the conservation of energy. And if I teleport while I'm moving at this velocity, then I will still retain that velocity wherever I teleport to, which I thought at first I was like, oh, is that how it works? But then I recalled X-Men 2, the movie, the opening sequence of that, which is still one of my favorite sequences in any superhero movie, is where they introduce Nightcrawler and they make full use of that that principle, actually, like the conservation of energy, because
Yep.
Nightcrawler launches himself at one guy, but then teleports in the middle of that trajectory and then appears somewhere else. And it's like he's gone,
Same velocity, yeah.
basically gone through a wormhole in space, but retained his velocity. And so I think that's exactly what Nightcrawler is talking about here,
Agreed.
on page 2 of this comic, which in hindsight, at first I was like, really, is that how it works? But in hindsight, I think, yeah, that must be how his power works.
Well, it makes sense. It makes sense. Even in the movie Jumper, they do that with the people who can teleport in that.
Right.
They're falling and they have to teleport backwards into water to slow them down and everything, so they don't kill themselves when they teleport back down to the ground.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's off. That's not X-Men, so we're going to talk about that. But I found that really interesting that they're having that conversation, and I'm like, what's going on here?
Right.
They're falling to their doom, and they're just, I have to do this, I have to do that. And it's like, you've got how many people? 2 people that can fly, and you're not just going, grab onto people now, grab. And yes, so I love the Colossus. I do love this page with Colossus saying, no, I'll be fine.
Yeah, he's just happy to slam into the ground.
And I just love that he's so sure of his powers. I mean, I'm sure he's never fell from this height before, but he's still very confident that he'll be fine.
Right. Well, he got
a bit of a crater, which is also good.
Yeah, that's cool. He did get crashed into by his family tractor in the giant size issue. So I guess he's used to. I mean, he's obviously had some experience since he's gained his powers in the amount of impact he can suffer, because he was very casual and relaxed about, like, no, don't worry about me. I'll just slam into the ground. I'll be fine. You just just take care of yourselves.
Yeah, just sort yourselves out. I'll be sweet.
So Storm grabs Wolverine and Nightcrawler, and Banshee, who is the only other member of the team who can fly, says he can only take one person, and that person is Thunderbird. And the reason he gives is because he doesn't have enough lift. So, but that made me think, well, the only way Storm can fly is by generating, lift with, increasing the air pressure.
Yeah.
Underneath.
That's my understanding of how powers work.
Yeah. So, why couldn't she just do that for everybody? It's like, it's another one of these things where, like, as a kid, you don't, we've talked about this in every episode so far. You don't think about it as a kid, but reading it as an adult, you kind of start picking things apart. Well, I do anyway. Like,
well, no, I'm the same. I picked this apart big time, and I'm like, but luckily, even doing that, I still really enjoy it. So it's not a bad thing.
No, it doesn't ruin the story at all.
I didn't read this as a kid, so it's not like nostalgia is like kicking in or anything like that either.
Right.
This is new to me. Giant Size I have read before. It was in one of the Masterworks that I had in my 20s. And I read to there, and then I was just like, oh, new comics have come in, and just forgot about this giant book that I bought for an expensive price and never read any more of it. And but yeah. Even with picking apart, so anyone watching, even though I'm picking this apart, I still love it. It's just fun to go, isn't it funny how they do this? Isn't it funny how they do that?
Yeah. We do this with love.
He dives. He doesn't try to slow his fall down. He actually puts his hands out in front of him and dives into the ground.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the reasons why I always thought Colossus was so cool, because he was the strongest member of the team and seemingly, invulnerable with his metal skin and stuff. So I always thought that he was a really cool character, and I love his powers. So yeah, I think that moment was really quite fun.
It's really cool. It's like when he did it, I'm like, wow. But the only thing I had was he was so confident about it. But you can say that about any of them. They're all very confident in their powers, even if
Right.
they've only just discovered them in the X-Men, I've noticed.
True.
They're always very sure of themselves.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm jealous.
I didn't say anything. So yeah, Banshee basically just tells Scott, like, sorry, dude. Be right back. BRB.
Right.
Gonna drop Thunderbird off on the ground. And meanwhile, Scott's like, come on, Banshee, pull the lead out, man. And he's getting closer and closer to the ground. And just as he's about to get impaled on a tree, he is rescued at the last minute. So he's obviously very close to the ground now.
Extremely.
He's, almost getting smashed into a tree. Banshee saves him. And so then they're all safe on the ground. On page 6, Cyclops finally has the HR conversation with Thunderbird, telling him, don't call me One Eye. The name is Cyclops. This last episode, we were talking about the name calling between all members. So Cyclops finally said something. Is like, hey, that's not cool. Come on. We want a fair workplace and respectful workplace. Please call me Cyclops, my proper code name. And then Nightcrawler, also on page 6, Nightcrawler teleports inside the military base, the Valhalla base, only to be ambushed by the Frogman member of the Animen, who doesn't like being called Frogman. And Nightcrawler, defeats him very quickly.
This shows that Nightcrawler is more than just a teleporter.
Right. Yeah, he actually can fight, which also makes, it's, again, going back to what you were saying, they're all very comfortable, even though, like, they did do a training sequence.
Of course.
The earlier issue.
That went for months, apparently.
Yeah, so I guess, okay, they've all got some skills. But yeah, just sort of strategy wise, as a reader, you like I was saying, like, you can't help thinking, like, was that the wisest move to do? So it sort of seems like strategy wise, they're still very obvious in terms of, like, they still rush in without a real solid plan. Even though they do have skills enough to be able to use their powers in an offensive or defensive manner and handle themselves in a fight. And Nightcrawler, defeats the frog guy, whose name we find out is Croker on page 8, when Count Nefaria, we find Count Nefaria has actually been monitoring the fight. And calls him Croker.
Because that's not worse than Frogman.
Exactly.
What I found fascinating about this, I might be remembering it wrong from modern comics, so they hadn't made this law yet, but Nightcrawler usually can only teleport where he can see. He's got to see.
I was wondering about that.
There's nothing in the way. I think he's done it a few times in the comics where he doesn't, where he's sure there isn't something on the other side.
Right.
I think the explanation they give is that he could teleport into the middle of a wall.
So counterpoint to that,
they even explore that in the movie as well. They emphasize it more than the comics ever did.
I'm not sure whether he has to be able to. I don't know whether it's necessarily a line of sight thing or whether it's somewhere that he has seen before.
Yeah,
like,
that's what
I think. It's like, if he can get a mental visual image of where he's got to teleport to, then he can teleport there. But if he doesn't know what a place looks like, then he can't do it, I think.
Yeah.
I think that
was my understanding. That's why I found it fascinating that he teleports into the middle of this place. The other thing I find funny is that they didn't send someone in with him, like because they've already made it apparent that he can teleport other people.
True.
So why not take Colossus with him? You know, just
right.
in case there's something on the other side.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, they should have a buddy system.
Buddy system, yes. But yeah, he takes out Croaker. I was going to say Frogman.
Yep.
Croaker quite easily. So that's pretty cool that you're showing that Nightcrawler is quite capable in hand to hand.
Yeah.
So does he use his power in there at all? Oh, he does just once to sneak up on him.
Yeah. But then as Nightcrawler is flipping the switch to open the door to admit the rest of the X-Men into the base, we see in the background of one panel that Croaker actually has come back to consciousness, and he sneaks off.
I love that little sneak off, little in the background scene. Ooh, sneaking off.
Yeah.
This is what always fascinates me. But this is every comic. That anyone can figure out any machinery and figure out what buttons to press to make things happen. But that's any comic. That's not just this comic. They can do that anywhere. It's like this magic skill. The only time I've ever seen it explained was with Spider-Man, where he used his powers of precognition, or whatever you call it.
His spider sense?
Spider sense, that's what I'm looking for. Like, he'd go to press a button if he got the sense that it was dangerous. He wouldn't just go for when it was the powers told him it was a good button to press, he'd press it.
Oh, that's pretty clever. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So that's the only time it made sense.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There is a lot of that technology awareness going on in this issue and in the next issue too. I know we're not talking about the next issue yet, but there's stuff that happens in the next issue that I'm like, they know how to do that. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. I love how they do
keep going on, keep reading. So on page 9, go ahead.
Yeah, so then they get in, and pretty much they've got a booby trap almost straight away, which is page 9. Yep.
First panel.
I love the way they know about this. Like, they go, "Oh, it's a bit humid in here. Oh, a bit stuffy."
Right. The gas.
I'm pretty sure gas would just come in.
Yeah. No,
I like that. I love that explanation. It's like, "Oh, it's getting a bit stuffy in here." Oh, that's why, because there's gas coming in.
You got to give him some warning, I guess.
Some warning.
Also, I noticed in panel 1, Thunderbird calls Cyclops One Eye again. He just told him, "Don't call me One Eye."
Yes,
my name is
that's
Cyclops.
what I answered as well. That's. I love that they do that. That he's still like, "Yeah, I don't care what you want me to call you. I'm calling you One Eye."
Yeah. So still,
which is really sums up his
interpersonal problems.
Really. Yeah,
right. Exactly.
It sums up his attitude towards the whole thing, which you explained in the last episode of this show. Why doesn't he just leave? He's so unhappy.
Right.
He hates everyone. But there is that scene in the last one where he does think to himself, "Oh, good one. What did you do there?" So there's a bit of a redeeming thing going on. It's like it's just all a big act, tough guy.
They do later in this issue. They also do a little bit of his internal monologue as well, where you do get a little bit of insight into like why he acts the way he is and why he's, kind of on this mission and why he makes the decisions that he makes in this issue. But I guess, you don't want to have all that sort of explained right up front when there's no reason for it. But it did make me kind of wonder about like, why is he going on this mission? Like, he doesn't like any of the people, doesn't want to be there. But nonetheless, he's still on the mission.
Well, that's cool they explain it. That is cool they explain it. Because it is a bit of a mystery in the last one. He's injured, he doesn't like anyone, and he's like determined to be on the mission.
Right. So at the bottom of this page, the X-Men smash through a wall to get out of the room that's filling with gas, only to be met by the U.S. military. So there's troops in the base, and at first, when I saw this, I was like, "But wait, didn't the general that they talked to in the last issue when they arrived tell the troops like, guys, the X-Men are here to help. Don't shoot them." There was obviously no discussion with the troops. But then on the next scene, next page, you find out, no, the soldiers have been hypnotized by Count Nefaria. So,
and for a man that can only see red, I am impressed that he can tell when someone's been hypnotized.
right, right, yes. I wrote that down too. It was like Cyclops can tell they've been hypnotized just by looking at them. Okay,
So that training in the danger room, it just
right,
prepares you for everything. It prepares you for everything.
right. So there was actually a method to the madness of not showing exactly what they were trained in
Yes.
Giant Size X-Men issue 1. Was now you can just sort of write off like, oh well, that was part of their training when they first arrived at the mansion. Was
Exactly.
we're gonna make it so that you guys can identify who's been hypnotized and who hasn't been hypnotized in any crowd. It's a useful skill, might come in handy one day. So, and lo and behold, here it is.
Next mission comes in handy. Excellent.
Exactly, exactly. And so Storm summons a flood.
Yeah, I found that fascinating because that's not how I understand her powers. But then again, that might be something that has been set up in more recent years, and she just had the ability to control weather events back then.
Right.
Flood is a weather event, so she can make a flood. The way I know Storm is she can see and manipulate patterns in the weather and so forth.
Right.
So the closest she could do to this in modern comics is bring in a hell of a rainstorm and then wait for it to make a flood. I don't think they had that time here. So
that's what I that's how I sort of read it, as like, well, I guess what she's actually doing is she's summoning the mother of all torrential downpours inside the room, and the volume of water that is falling from the clouds that she's created is so great that it floods the room and it washes the soldiers away down the corridor, and they never come back. They're out of sight, out of mind. We don't know whether they're okay or not. We assume, they just got pushed away. They didn't drown.
Yeah, they got pushed away. They're all good. The water unhypnotized them, and they went back to the army. Went, oh, we're not supposed to shoot at these guys.
Exactly. Exactly. They got chewed out by General Fredericks. He was like, what are you doing? They're here to help.
And it's funny, the last panel in this page, it's a weird thing. I really like the way they've drawn Storm. It's really odd, and I don't like it, but I like it at the same time. It's really hard to explain. But they've sort of got the cat eyes going on, which I don't know if they introduce that later. Because this isn't quite cat eyes, it's just really thin pupils. Not pupils, irises. But I like it. But I like that they've established the blue eyes even back then. I wasn't sure if that was a new thing or an old thing.
Yeah. One thing
that's the other thing I like about reading these little comics is finding out that some of the things I took as canon go way back to here.
Yeah. Well, I do like Dave Cockrum's artwork on this series, as I've said before, and I do think that Sam Granger is inking him here, and I kind of like his inks. They have a cartoony quality to a lot of the faces, but he also does really nice inking work on the textures of stuff. He uses a different line so that metal looks like metal, and rocks look like rocks, and you often hear inkers talk about you want to make the line look like the texture of the thing that you're trying to depict. And I think Sam Granger's really quite good at that. I'd never really heard of Sam Granger before I looked him up after seeing his name on this one. He actually did a fair amount of inking work for Marvel in the late 60s, early 70s. And then I think he went on in the 80s. He did a lot of work for Dungeons and Dragons. Like all the manuals and stuff like that, like a lot of the spot illustrations. He did work for the TSR and the Dungeons and Dragons publishing company. So I thought that was interesting because he definitely wasn't one of those names that I don't think he had like a long career in comics. But
Well,
the
name was new to me, so
viewers can correct me if I'm wrong.
That would be great in the
In
comments.
the comments,
if we're wrong.
I'd love to know. But yeah, I agree with you on the art. I think I generally just like the look of Dave Cockrum's X-Men. The layouts are always really good. He's really good at depicting action, and even on scenes where it's basically just a lot of talking, just a conversation. He varies the panel layouts enough to it's never boring. It's kind of I don't want to say it's a lost art in modern comics, but you don't see that as often in modern comics where it's just talking heads. So, that's my opinion.
I'm a real fan of his art now. I hadn't come across a lot of it before these, and because I'm actually going to the effort to look at these properly, not just skim through them like the last time I read Giant Size X-Men. He's really cool, and I love. He did the designs as well, didn't he, for these costumes?
Yeah,
I thought so. Yeah, so that's really cool because they are iconic costumes, and as much as they get changed, they seem to come back all the time to these costumes.
Absolutely,
or at least slight variations of these costumes.
Yeah. So page 11, the Animen are back. They attack with full force. Banshee and Thunderbird get taken down quite quickly by the Ape Man, who refers to himself as Gort. And he also refers to himself in the third person, just like Count Nefaria was referring to himself in the third person in the previous issue. So I guess that's just a general villain thing.
It's a villain thing, yeah.
I wondered whether Gort was a reference to the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still, because that's the name of the robot from the 50s sci-fi movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still. Yeah, Gort. So I don't know whether that's a conscious reference or whether it's just a coincidence, but it's just something that I thought about and noticed.
Well, Gort is surprisingly strong as well.
He is.
Because he takes on Colossus quite happily.
Right.
And he's quite a force to be reckoned with for everyone else as well.
Yep. So as you were saying earlier, I don't know whether it was before we started recording or not, but fighting. A lot of fighting in this issue.
Yes, a lot of fighting. It's awesome. Woo!
Yeah, I think that that's kind of what you want in a superhero comic, is you want at least like a good third of the pages to just be a fight or something where the heroes are like getting to use their powers.
Well, they had a fight with gravity earlier,
cool.
So that's something.
Right, fight with gravity, exactly. On page 12, my candidate for the band name this issue.
Oh, yep.
On page 12, I Colossus, which I think is on page panel 4. I think he says I Colossus.
Oh, no, that's right down the bottom of the last panel.
Oh, okay.
I grabbed it, I Colossus.
Yeah, so I thought I Colossus would make a good band name.
Yeah, that is I Colossus. I like that. He goes, while Colossus lives, third person. The Wolverine will not be harmed.
He does it too.
Yeah, he does it too. Maybe this is like a hint that one day he'll go rogue.
Oh, maybe.
But and the fight continues on the next page, and it's just showing off all their powers. Showing how they work well as a team now.
Yes, that was one thing that I really liked, was it showed nice teamwork amongst them, where one character would get seemingly overwhelmed, and then another character would kind of come to their aid, and they'd take out another one of the Animen, and then it would happen again with one of the other characters. So I thought that was good. It really did show nice teamwork, and not so much an organized plan, but just that they're all willing to fight for each other and help each other out, which I liked.
Yeah.
Just as a general kind of teamwork thing. I thought
Which
that
has
was
always
really
been my
cool.
favorite thing about the X-Men.
Yeah, it was cool. So then, is it on the next page where we see Dragonfly, which is the female member? So it is revealed that she has hypnotic powers. And so I was wondering, well, maybe she's the one who hypnotized the troops,
Yep,
even though
that's
it's
what I
not
was thinking.
explained, but it sort of makes sense. But then I thought this part was interesting. She unwittingly does herself in by she starts to hypnotize Cyclops, and his eyes start to like relax and open wide, which triggers his visor to the lens in his visor to open up and releases the eye beams, which then takes her out. So that's an interesting view into how his visor actually works.
Yes, that's what I love. That is my favorite part of this page. To be honest, it's like I did not know that about his visor.
Right,
opening his eyes wide opens it. The gadget on the side gives the how much it opens by.
Yeah,
because I know about that because he always puts his hand up there to adjust something.
Right.
So it's like I thought that was opening it, but no.
That's
his
what I
eyes
thought
open
too.
wide opens it.
Yeah,
That was fascinating.
I don't know whether that's been retconned since, but it's interesting that even at this early stage, that the thought was put into, well, how does his visor actually work? So I thought that was really cool. I liked that a lot.
Well, it makes sense if his arms are like, what do you call it, restricted in some way. He can still just open his eyes and away he goes. It just can't control how much power comes out.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. I really like that. I had no idea that was ever a thing.
That was cool.
Now I kind of hope it still is.
I'm sure there's.
I'm surprise him. You don't want to surprise him.
What? Yeah, exactly. So then they defeat the Animen. It looks like Dragonfly was the final member of the team that they had to defeat. But then they find out that the Doomsmith supercomputer that controls all of the US missile stockpile has only 18 minutes before it's going to launch all the missiles. So they've got 18 minutes to shut this thing down. On page 15, Banshee and Thunderbird are knocked out. They're unconscious, but they don't have time to worry about their two teammates because they only got 18 minutes, and they've got to run 3 cubic miles in 18 minutes. That's not a jog. That's a pretty fast run.
Wow, I didn't even realize that. How does one run 3 cubic miles?
Well, I guess that's essentially like 3 miles.
Oh, okay.
But they say like 3 cubic miles. I don't know why they said 3 cubic miles.
Yeah, that's interesting. It just sounds cooler, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
it's like 12. I can do the Kessel run in 12
squares.
parsecs. Yeah.
But
they do get to
that one.
Yeah. If he did, he wasn't too worried about it.
Wasn't too worried. He said, the kids will love it. Sounds cool.
Yeah, exactly. No one's going to know. So they do get to the console, and they've got 9 seconds to spare. I think it says 0.09 minutes, which I'm assuming just means 9 seconds, not 9 1/100ths of a minute.
And I was really surprised that so much happens in those 9 seconds.
I know. It's crazy. Okay, so here's one of the parts where it made me go, huh? What happened? Because they get to the machine, they see that there's 9 seconds left, but Cyclops says the auto self-destruct sequence has been engaged. But it's like, why did Nefaria set the console to self-destruct? It was already gonna launch all the missiles. He would have won. He would have accomplished his plan.
I've been defeated. Self-destruct.
Because there was no way they could turn it off. But then he set it to self-destruct to just blow up the base. He could have gotten away scot-free. So to me, that was the biggest thing in this issue where I was like, that makes zero sense. I mean, it sounds really cool, like to say, like, oh no, self-destruct sequence. But
actually, I have a theory. For this. Because I was thinking the same thing. And my theory was his hatred of the X-Men is so intense that he wanted to make sure they were blown up more than he wanted the whole world blown up.
That's a good theory, actually.
Yeah,
because he did have
he's a bit crazy.
Yeah, he did have a history with the X-Men from before, so that actually makes sense. Okay, that's good. You've calmed my fears. You've put my mind at ease.
I think it's actually the next page. Oh, no, it's not that next page. I was going to say I've got a page that really stuffs with my mind.
Yeah,
but it's not the next one. So first we go to Banshee and I want to say Warpath.
Thunderbird.
Warpath is his little brother in the comics back when I'm reading the X-Force.
That's right.
And they've come to. They just happen to go through the building and they catch the old Count making his escape.
Yep.
And
jumps in a Harrier jump jet.
Yeah, of all things. And and Thunderbird is so determined to make himself look great in this mission. He jumps on the the plane. Sorry, I'm forgetting the words for things. And just starts bashing at it. Right. So I guess that's his power. He's strong. So it just starts.
Yeah, I mean his power is essentially just super strength, and I think super speed
and super senses. I think is what it is. Just not to the degree that Superman is.
Right, but it also seems like he has the power to defy logic because you got a guy right beside you who can fly. And Banshee actually tells him, what are you doing? I can fly and I can take out the jet with my sonic powers, but I can't do it when you're clinging to the outside of it. Get off.
Yeah. Get off.
So it's total bravado operating here on Thunderbird's part. He's just like taking charge and he's like, screw this. I'm going to take care of this once and for all. Show the rest of these X-Men wimps that I'm the best.
I'm the best.
And that they don't know what they're doing.
That's the impression I got.
Yeah.
And
so
these 2 panels or 3 panels, the 2 panels at the top is what really got me.
Okay.
One,
yes.
You can see that the timer is still at, you can just see that looks like a 9. So it's still at 9 seconds.
Right.
Something's going wrong here.
Yes.
It could be wrong. It could be a 5. I don't know. Maybe it's gone down to 4 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But Charles disabled it mentally. I'm like, how did he do that?
Yeah. So that brings up a couple of questions because I wrote some stuff down on this page because I was like, what? Because, okay, Cyclops, first student of Professor X. He sees Professor X as a mentor and a father figure. He's always trying to live up to Professor X's high expectations for him, always trying to do the best that he can. Cyclops is desperately trying to stop the Doomsmith machine from self-destructing. And then Professor X comes into his mind and says, what are you doing? What are you wasting time doing this for? Like, I just really felt for Cyclops at this moment. Like, the poor guy just can't win. Like, he can't catch a break. He's doing the best he can. He's on this mission. He's trying to lead this mission that Professor X put him in charge of. And yet Professor X is like, just like, get out of there, you idiot. You're doing the wrong thing. Go to the front of the building
I didn't think of it
Yeah,
that way.
got
That's awesome.
Thunderbird, and no wonder like Cyclops has this reputation for being like, oh, he's got this stick up his butt and he's so uptight. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, no wonder. Like his
Yes.
father figure and mentor is constantly like moving the goalposts on him. And it's like, I told you to go over there. No, go over the other side. Side of the room. It's like, not that, you idiot. So,
but I just love it when he's like, I've disabled it. I'm like, what?
Yeah, and that's the other thing is like, well, then couldn't you have done that? If you can disable this from the other side of the world or the other side of the country, couldn't you have done that to begin with?
Yeah, exactly.
All this is Professor X's fault. Everything that happens in the next 3 pages is Professor X's fault.
I like that. Oh, this is where we find out that the 9 is not 9 seconds. It was indeed 9 minutes because he actually says how many minutes it is in this scene.
Okay. So there you go. Yeah. 9 minutes makes more sense.
It makes a hell of a lot more sense because I'm sure that big spiel sentence that he gives that the bomb's about to go off would have taken 9 seconds to say.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Okay. Okay.
But yeah, I only just
logic
noticed that
problem
now
solved.
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, why is it?
Whatever. Yeah. Page turn moment at the bottom of this page, the last panel, where Thunderbird is smashing the cockpit of the jet and Banshee's yelling, "For God's sake, laddie, get off the plane!"
Yes.
Something bad's about to happen. And you turn the page. Really nice bit of narration. So a couple of really cool things on this page. Really nice bit of narration by Chris Claremont. On the first panel, I think it reads, John Proudstar's hands rip deep into the Harrier's cockpit, ravaging control systems, computers, electronic hardware, ripping the technic nervous system out of the aircraft. I just thought that was really nice, really nicely written.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Very dramatic. And I love the way that this moment is staged all in a very, very wide shot, far away from the action. That's just such a really dramatic way to stage this. And it makes the X-Men feel incredibly powerless to do anything because they're already so, like, the jet is so far away, although does seem like a situation where Nightcrawler could have teleported onto the jet, grabbed him,
thank God
teleported
I'm
off.
thinking that.
But let's not mention that.
Nightcrawler.
No one's to blame for his death but Thunderbird.
Yes.
Not Professor X, not Cyclops, not Nightcrawler, not Banshee.
Secretly, we'll blame them all, but...
and then, so the plane explodes in midair. And
at the bottom of this page, we find out how enormous Charles Xavier's eyebrows are.
They are pretty... That is one hell of an eyebrow drawing on that final panel. That's pretty cool.
We'll go to the next page. Are we finished on this page for you?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so not only do they explode midair, but then the plane crashes. If that weren't bad enough, the plane crashes into the mountain. And so I'm pretty sure that both Count Nefaria and Thunderbird are no more. If they didn't die in the midair explosion, they surely died when the wreckage crashed into the mountain. And Charles was inside Proudstar's mind, inside Thunderbird's mind when he died, feeling what he felt.
I like that.
So another point. I hate to be bringing up all these points, but another thing that occurred to me. Ooh. So in Giant Size X-Men, we saw that Charles is a very powerful telepath who can essentially exercise mind control on even large crowds, of people because he stopped the crowd that was chasing Nightcrawler, he just stopped them all in their tracks. So if he can do that, why couldn't he just command Thunderbird to jump off the plane?
Yeah, jump off the damn plane,
allowing Banshee to catch him, and then you know, the plane would have exploded anyway, probably because of all the damage.
Yeah.
But that was another thing where I was like, well, somebody could have done something. Like, they had so many powers
to blame.
to choose
this
from.
Would be a work health and safety nightmare.
Right. And then is this the final? Yeah, this is the final page, right?
This is the final page, and
I
the
thought
ending
it was
just gets me. Just not in a makes me hurt in my heart. It just gets me where I'm like swearing, "What the hell?" Well, that's not swearing, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I get you.
So the plane has crashed, and funnily enough, it's crashed right near where the X-Men were watching.
Right.
So it's flown all the way back
went
to
backwards.
Yeah,
it went backwards.
But that's just so it makes a nice scene, of course. We know why
exactly. So they can get a nice camera angle.
But this I have to read this out because it's just
Yeah.
I suppose it had to happen sometime. Hell, sooner or later, it happens to all of us in this business. It comes with the uniform. Someone just died, dude. And all these people were just asked, do you want to be an X-Men? And they're like, yeah, we'll do the training. I never understood that part. And now they're like, oh, wow, we can die doing this? And they were like, yeah, cool, we'll still be an X-Men. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah, and I wrote down, this issue ends on a particularly cold moment from Cyclops, who is basically saying, it happens.
Yes.
It's like, oh my God, someone just died.
Yeah.
And you're just like, well, you know, these things happen. Hate to tell you.
Yeah, it could happen to any of us.
Right.
Come back to base and let's train some more.
Yeah. You guys are all still cool, right? You're still cool being on the team, right?
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, I'd be out of there straight away. I'd be like, what the hell am I doing this for?
Exactly. What have I signed up for?
This dude who's our leader is just like, yeah, you can die. It'll happen anytime. It'll happen to all of us eventually.
Right. It's very grim. Very grim. So, yeah, interesting because I was wondering, why you had the response that you did to the end. And that's exactly the same response I had was like, oh, geez, bit grim. Oh, my God.
Yeah. And so cold.
Very cold. Like, very cold. Yeah.
Dude, no wonder people don't like you.
Yes.
Man.
Yes. Well, I blame Professor X.
Yes. He has hammered this stuff into poor old Cyclops and just stuck with his head. And
exactly. So one thing I have to say about this reread is, you know, as an older adult, is I'm just seeing the characters' personalities far differently than I did as a kid. Like this is a case in point. Like the way that Cyclops reacts to one of his teammates dying, and it's basically just a shrug and, oh, well, moving on. I don't know. And then seeing how Professor X talks to Cyclops in this issue, I just have more of a sense of like, well, that's not really a psychologically it's a very dysfunctional way of interacting with someone, let's say. And a little bit, it's just, I don't know whether I'd call it like toxic, but let's just say like this was the 70s, by the way. And I don't think there was as much of an awareness of, we certainly didn't have like PC culture and the current sort of like, office workplace culture, which is very conscious of how people speak to each other, wanting to avoid any sort of harassment type of harassing type of language, which I think does sort of, that has fed into modern fiction in a way. I'm not saying in a direct way, but I just think it it just goes by osmosis because it's just the times that we're living in now versus the times that this was created in. Obviously, there wasn't that much of an awareness of that sort of stuff. So I do think it's interesting to look back at these with that modern sensibility and it's weirdly shocking in a way. And there's more of that in the next issue. I haven't read the next issue yet, but
I haven't
oh
read
my
it.
God,
Sorry.
dude, it gets worse.
It gets
you
worse.
Just wait.
Oh no,
it gets worse. The way that I can't wait to talk about the next issue.
Oh, okay. I'm looking forward to that now.
It's it'll be fun to talk about because there's plenty more of that dysfunctional dialogue in the next one.
Oh,
so
interesting.
That's a teaser for the
teaser?
next episode.
Oh, yes. The one thing I will say about this, if I had read this as a kid, I probably would have gone with the whole, yes, the X-Men are a military unit. Death, it just comes part with it. And I would have just put it off as that. But reading it now, I'm like, Cyclops, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah, well, I did read this as a kid, and that is how I read it. And it's sort of, it is that sort of like, we're all soldiers here, and this is a war, and I know you didn't want to fight it, but you've been drafted into this war whether you like it or not. It's that kind of thing. And it sounds cool, like it is written that way, and the language does sound cool in that sort of context, I think. That's how I did read it as a kid. But it's funny to look at now. So
yes, it's just like, these people are all volunteers. What are you doing?
So just before we wrap up,
are they volunteers? We've got Professor X who can make people do things.
Well, that's been my I'm always like second guessing everything in this story because I'm like, wait, did Professor X manipulate them to take that decision, or to say that, or to do that? Is that actually Professor X's doing, or are they acting out of their own free will? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's not Professor X. I'm sure it is just the characters doing their thing, but it's weird to sort of have that doubt.
Well, that was put in my mind by Krakow, who actually said in one of the things in the first book that he had manipulated Charles to manipulate mutants to come to the island.
Right.
So I'm like, so that thought was put in my mind, and it's stuck now. Stuck.
That's actually a really cool idea for a story, which I don't know whether they've done since, but like, what if a stronger telepath than Charles manipulated Charles to manipulate, he just used Xavier as a proxy to manipulate all of the X-Men to do, some evil plan or some plot. That sounds kind of cool. That sounds like a really cool plot device. I don't know whether they've done that in X-Men.
We'll find out.
I guess we'll find out in 8 years when we finally catch up. How many did you say we have to do? Like 700
I think it was
issues?
7.5 years.
Right.
To catch up to now. So then we'll have 7 years to catch up on.
Right, because it's still, we'll never catch up. We don't have to catch up. There'll be an endless supply of X-Men comics. We can keep going for 50 years.
I love it.
So I forgot what I was gonna ask.
No, sorry.
You. No, that's fine. I'm sure I'll think about it later. On the next episode. I wanted to ask you a question about. So just before we wrap up, just the general sort of plot of this issue, with going back to the blurb on the front with like an X-Man dies. I don't know whether for its time, like, this seems to me to be very revolutionary, that they killed off what you think is a major character so early
Yeah.
in the life of the team.
Yes.
It almost felt like Thunderbird was just put on the team only to be killed off as a plot device. I don't know if that's the case, or whether it was, because Len Wein set up the team, but then when Claremont came on,
Yeah.
because also Thunderbird has a very similar personality to Wolverine, or at least what Wolverine became, in terms
Became,
of the position that he kind of occupied in the overall group dynamic of the team. Was he was always the grumpy one, and the one who was picking fights with his teammates and complaining and stuff like that. Well, that was what Thunderbird was doing, and Wolverine was definitely not center stage in these first few issues. He was just kind of, I would say it's fair to say he's even on the sidelines of these first few issues. So
yeah, he is, isn't he?
yeah, it makes me wonder whether when Claremont came on, and he was obviously sort of taking more control of the book with each issue, whether he sort of thought, like, I know what I want to do with Wolverine, and I don't need two of that kind of character to
Yeah.
be on the team. So I'm going to get rid of Thunderbird because I think Wolverine is more interesting. It's just something that, like, I'm sure we'll see as with successive issues, whether that sort of is how
Sorry about
things
that.
play out. What's that?
I said sorry about that. My phone just started beeping.
Oh, no worries. No worries. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether that sort of plays out. Because now that Thunderbird's out of the picture,
Yeah.
I'm sure we are going to see Wolverine will take more of center stage. Because these days Wolverine's like the star of the X-Men, and he did become the kind of central character of the X-Men. I think very quickly.
Yep.
After he was introduced and after this title started. So it'll be interesting to sort of watch that
Okay.
happen over
That
the
will
next
be
few
cool to watch.
issues. Yeah. So yeah, that was all the thoughts I had about this issue. Did you have any final thoughts that you wanted to bring to the discussion?
All I really had was the fact that it's sort of like in the last episode, last issue. I've got to stop saying episode. Oh dear. Proud Star is they've done that whole making him really angry, making him really arrogant, making him really unpleasant to deal with. And I
Yeah.
was wondering if was that Len working off the giant size, or was that Chris going, let's make him unlikable a little bit, so the death isn't so. But I mean,
Right.
if that was the case, it would make sense that they did the inner thought part where they're like, he's like, "Oh, what have you done now, you idiot? Oh, you're
Right.
pushing all these people away." So that shows he's
Yeah.
a really nice guy underneath it all.
Right.
So maybe that was to make the death more impactful. I don't know. I'm assuming. Yeah, that is weird. It's like if Chris took it over and said, "Okay, we're going to kill him in the second issue, my second issue," was that ever the plan in giant size? Because that would
Right.
be kind of sad that they brought a character in, fleshed him
Right.
out just to kill him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting though.
It is interesting.
I would love to know, and again, like, viewers, if you have any insight into this, leave a comment.
Oh, yes, definitely.
I would love to know, like, historically in the history of comics, what other major character deaths were there. I know that Legion of Superheroes killed off. I think it was Pharaoh Lad. But yeah, they
Oh,
had a
really?
major death in the Silver Age.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, I don't know whether this was like a common thing to do. Like, the companies really wanted these characters to kind of live and keep going to be able to be used, obviously in future stories. So yeah, I'd really be interested to see what's the precedent here for a character dying.
Well, this also reminds me the cover is true to the comic. I'm curious when we get along the run when that's going to stop. One, an X-Men does die. Two, there is a giant fight.
Yep.
The cover's actually telling you what's in the comic.
Which is
I'm curious when it starts, when covers just start being covers.
Yep. And it's one of my favorite things to see on a cover, which is text. I love seeing the the thing we talked about before, which is not a hoax, not an imaginary story. An X-Men dies, and then the Warhunt thing. The letterer I found out that the letterer for the covers was not the same as the letterer for the interiors. On Marvel Comics, there was a guy called Danny Crespi, and he was the guy who did all the lettering for Marvel covers. So that's why, especially in this era of like late 60s, early 70s, all the Marvel comics have this same style of this bombastic text on the
that's really cool.
Covers. And I love it. I just love how it looks. I just love that look. So yeah, want to shout out Danny Crespi.
Yeah. Well, speaking of lettering, I always find it fascinating these older comics. There was no digital lettering.
No, so this is all by hand.
Amazing.
Yes. So, all done by hand and pasted up physically onto a piece of artboard. Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy.
Pretty cool.
Well, I guess that takes us to the part where I say, if you're watching this video, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share the video. Let other X fans get to hear about us yabbering about X-Men. Yes. And that would be great. So I always get stuffed at this because I always forget to plan what I'm going to say at the end. No, I got nothing.
Yeah, that's the best.